Thesis. Practical Wisdom with Scott Allen.
Hello, I am Scott Allen, and thanks to my daughter Kate for developing the intro to the Practical Wisdom for Leaders podcast, where we offer a smart, fast-paced discussion on all things leadership. My guests help us explore timely topics and incorporate practical tips to help you make a difference in how you lead and live. If you haven't done so, please click subscribe so you automatically, seamlessly stay in the know when we publish new episodes. Likewise, please provide me with feedback. What do you like? What do you dislike? And what else would you like to know? And now, today's show. Micheal Stratton. He is the guest today on the program. We were just discussing that we're both, I think, probably a little geeky. He has Baby Yoda in the background, and I have R2-D2 in the background. And so you know it's going to be a good conversation, sir. How are you?
Absolutely. Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Tell our listeners about you. I'm going to call you the pandemic leader. I think you took on 2 significant leadership roles during the pandemic. You just can't get enough. Is there a third in the works right now?
A third disaster? No.
Leadership role, another context. You're leading an association, a school of business, right? And maybe there's another place for you to lead as well through the pandemic.
No. I said no to the presidency, so I decided not to run this go around. So, yeah, as you said, I'm president of the Management Organizational Behavior Teaching Society, mobts.org. In my second year of leading that organization, in my 5th month as Dean of the J. Whitney Bunting College of Business at Georgia College and State University. I think that if there's anything to say about me, I'm ambitious and impatient at the same time. And so about MOBTS, I've been part of that organization since I was a doctoral student. My first conference is in 2005. It's an organization that its mission is really geared toward enhancing the quality of teaching and learning in management organization studies. And it's in its 47th year, I believe. It's been really impactful in my career, but also the career of many of our colleagues in business and public and nonprofit management as educators. It's near and dear to my heart. And I've been on the board since 2012. I was a faculty member at University of North Carolina, Asheville for 10 years. And when I was a junior faculty, I volunteered to help host our 40th anniversary conference of MOBTS.
I think that was my first. I checked in and I found myself in a residence hall, a dorm room, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But I ended up having just a wonderful experience. And I think I've probably been to 5 or 6 since then. But yeah, that was my first one. That was my first conference.
We jokingly call it summer camp for professors. It's a 3-day conference in June on a campus. We've held it everywhere from Stanford and Harvard to, we were supposed to host this past June at Purdue Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
But that did not happen. We had a virtual conference, but it's an incredible organization. Service on the board has been, I think, probably the most meaningful service I've done in academia, even taking into account leadership roles at UNC Asheville and obviously now here at Georgia College. I think being on the board at MOBTS, you really do see the impact of what we do at the conference and our journals, Journal of Management Education and the Management Teaching Review. Really the hands-on engagement with the faculty to help them be better teacher scholars. And that's kind of how I've approached my work with faculty, both when I was at Asheville and here at Asheville as chair faculty senate for 2 years and then chair and unit head for our Department of Management Accountancy there. I still use the word "our" when I talk about UNC Asheville. Being there for about a decade, I suppose I'll always have a part of me there. But even here, I mean, I kind of view the role of a leader in MOBTS or that as a dean or a chair or provost or president is really making sure that if your focus is student-centered and you want your students to succeed and you want to advance the institution, at the core of it, you really have to help your faculty. You have to advocate for your faculty and staff. I'm always reminded when I I guess before the pandemic, I was flying a lot to conferences and meetings, and you listen to the flight attendants who say, before you put your oxygen mask, on your child or the person next to you, make sure to put it on yourself first.
Yes.
And I think that's the case, before we can really support our students and ensure that they have a path forward, we really have to make sure our faculty have that oxygen mask. Our faculty have to be taken care of. They're on the front lines of educating our students. And if we do not take care of them, they cannot take care of our students. And so I think that's the case even, with MOBTS. We see as educators coming to us for a space to talk, to listen, to share ideas, to develop. We have to remind them about taking care of themselves and taking care of their colleagues so that they can help their students.
Talk a little bit about that. I would love to hear a little bit more about the kind of your approach. And it could just be, Micheal, your insights on transitioning into this new role as Dean of the College of Business. I love that. Take care of them so that they can take care of others. Are there any other mantras or principles you've kind of lived by as you've entered into that role? Because you're literally, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months in?
The first 2 months I was counting the days down. I'm not going to say math got difficult after that, but but there was
counting up now. Yeah.
Yeah, no. No, I'd say, I think anybody, well, I'm not going to say everyone, but I think my path in academia was such that if you asked me 10 years ago where I would have been now, it wouldn't have been in an academic leadership position. And I think if you asked me 20 years ago where I'd be, had just started graduate school.
Yeah.
And I was in a master's in public administration program, thinking I was going to be a public servant and working in the federal government and working my way up. I think similar to what happened in graduate school has happened in my career in academia, I've kind of just fallen into these roles. Part of it is ambition, but part of it is I really do like taking risks. And, when I was a doctoral student, and like I said, I literally just fell into that program. I was a semester into my master's program, and one of my faculty said, "You really should think about the Ph.D. program." And being a first generation college student, growing up a working class family in the mountains of Maine, going to college itself was a stretch, and going to graduate school at a top university, and then even the idea of joining a doctoral program. I had an undergraduate professor, Bill Ferris, who's part of MOBTS for years, who introduced me to the organization when I was a graduate student. He said that to me when I was an undergrad, and I just laughed. And I said, yeah, no. And plus, you're an undergrad, you're a senior, you're exhausted, right? You've been going to school your whole life. Even though I love school, it's like, I need a break. I just kind of fell into my doctoral program. In my second semester, I started the PhD program. And I remember talking with another mentor, my dissertation advisor, Sue Fairman, who Sue and Bill Ferris, they both introduced me to MOBTS when I was a PhD student. But I was working on my dissertation, and we went to lunch, and we had like a progress meeting, about where I was and everything. And she said to me, look, you're teaching as a graduate student, you're doing all of this service. You're the academic advisor for the undergraduate public administration policy program. You're the internship advisor. She said, and you're helping, with a reaccreditation. And she said, service is not going to write your dissertation. And so I think for early on in academia, I really was interested in background and the work of a higher education institution. And maybe because my area is organizational theory and behavior, that could be part of it. But and so when I took my first academic position after my doctoral program, it was at a small school in Maryland, Hood College, and assistant professor on the tenure track. And 9 months in, the provost asked me to be the director of the MBA program. Wow. And it was a small MBA program in Maryland. And that's when I got my first taste for academic leadership and curriculum leadership and program development and understanding the ins and outs of managing, faculty and adjunct recruitment and all of that. And I enjoyed it. I still love teaching. I still love research. And the problem was I loved it all. And I was reappointed, and then I went on the market again and found myself at UNC Asheville's public liberal arts university in the UNC system. And And I'm really been, liberal arts has been kind of part of my identity for a long time. And, I jumped into my research again, into my teaching, undergraduate research mentoring, which is a core value at UNC Asheville. And, circumstances change. After about 4 years, the chancellor, we have a UNC system has chancellors as university presidents, and chancellor announced retirement, provost announced retirement. There was some transition in the department leadership. I got tenure early, and then a couple weeks later, the outgoing provost, announced, appointed me as chair and accreditation unit head for our
Yes.
department, and it just kept going. And I just,
And then
again,
you led the faculty senate.
For 2 years, which is, I had a 3-year stint on Senate. I started on Senate as a junior faculty member. One of my faculty mentors said, you really are a supporter of our mission and our public liberal arts identity.
Yeah.
One of the things at Asheville was really impactful in my experiences. We had a shared humanities program, a 4-course sequence, and it was a interdisciplinary effort so that music faculty, sociologists, psychologists, biologists, and a management professor could teach a humanities capstone course on post World War II to today, everything from gender identity, poverty, globalization, environmental sustainability, and we all kind of came at it from our particular disciplinary lens. And this was the most engaging experience since graduate school. And sitting in a room full of folks from different disciplines, debating, discussing, identifying shared readings.
So cool.
And then my second year teaching in that program, I ended up leading the senior capstone humanities course. And so I think folks saw that, I really did eat and breathe and drink the Kool-Aid around the public liberal arts. And so I started working on faculty senate, and that was my first real experience with shared governance. It was, as a junior faculty, I often just sat back and watched and listened to my senior colleagues and going through transition and provost and, then a chancellor search, second chancellor while I was at Asheville. And then, I took about a year off from being faculty senator once my term was over. I was asked to go back on again, and then asked to run for the chair position. And it was so eye-opening to be chair of faculty senate when we're going through such another transition. Another chancellor search, a new provost search. And
what are 2 or 3 observations about that role, leading in that context? You have no formal authority. It's all influence.
When I was at Asheville, I developed a seminar course on organizational politics and power, really influenced by, the work of Jeff Pfeffer and others. And I saw it in action. And I fumbled, I tripped. I was really taking what we've learned in graduate school and in our research and work and implementing it. And I have to tell you, it was, for me, it was about relationships and authenticity, and really showing that, when I talk about shared governance, it was not, those weren't empty words. And so part of that was ensuring that the faculty understood that we were coming from, it wasn't antagonistic relationship between the administration and faculty in that transition, but it was definitely one. We went from one chancellor to another, and the second chancellor was only there for about 2 or 3 years. And so in my first year as Senate chair, and I think there was opportunity for us to reaffirm our commitment to basically being at the table, that faculty are at the table when decisions are made. As we search for our new chancellor, I made that very clear. I was on the chancellor search committee, and there were a couple of other senators as well. And so I think we made it known to the candidates that this was our expectation. And so building relationships with our administration colleagues was really critical in that role. And demonstrating that, okay, if we want to open the book, so to speak, and ensure that the faculty and students and staff are at the table when it comes to budget and finance decisions, how do we make that happen? And not letting it go, not saying, yep, we're going to do this and not bring it up again. And so I think part of this was authentically owning your words and following through. And I think I also learned about crisis management. that first year for Nancy Cable, our current chancellor at the time, that was brought in. I was in my second year as Senate chair. There was just every month a
Something.
new, not pandemic level crisis, obviously,
Yeah.
but it
Something.
was either financial or enrollment or system level politics or past decisions that were made in a vacuum and now coming back, into the media. And so I learned a lot from that chancellor, who really became a mentor to me. Those are some lessons learned during that experience, and I think that shaped really how I began to think about my future in higher education.
Okay.
I saw, leading an academic unit, leading a faculty senate part, and while at that time also on the MOBTS board, how really critical kind of being persistent and picking your battles, knowing how important compromise is,
Yeah.
and listening, quote, to the other side, and recognizing that the other side isn't the other side, that you're there together.
Yeah.
You just might not agree. And where can you find common ground? And I've taken that, even into my current role. So it's been really influential.
Well, I imagine relationships have been critical, and compromise, and everything that you've just said. But what do you see the future as? How do we as institutions continue to thrive based on the seat that you're sitting in? What's that recipe?
Well, I think both for MOBTS as an organization, as a nonprofit, and as a higher education institution that is serving, management educators in an environment that there are not necessarily competing organizations, but an environment of other higher education nonprofits, right, to support faculty development, scholarly endeavors. MOBTS is faced with this very similar situation as higher education units such as colleges of business. And I think there's actually very similar paths moving forward, and that is kind of removing ourselves from our respective silos and partnering with other entities. And so in MOBTS, one of kind of the central vision for MOBTS when I came on board was, and this was, the board affirmed this kind of audacious vision, which is really expanding the reach of the organization, taking the Kool-Aid that we serve and giving it to others and exposing them to the magic of the organization.
Yeah.
And so we've done that globally. We have an Oceania conference that's virtual this winter or their summer. And that was after an international conference in New Zealand a year ago, January, February, that was just full of energy. Folks who hadn't, who had participated in our journals in a variety of ways as authors or reviewers, or as associate editors, but hadn't been to our annual conference in the US. And so we saw that as a real opening. We have a new partnership with the University of Surrey in England for their management education certificate program. So MOBTS will be a partner with them in facilitating their workshops and their certificate program, and creating a pipeline of new educators or even seasoned educators that want to be master teachers, so to speak. We've announced our 2022 conference in Mannheim, Germany. We are now an affiliate, a nonprofit affiliate with AACSB, created a relationship with them. And Brandon Sharpete, our executive director, and I have worked really hard on behalf of the board to pre-pandemic to really do the face-to-face outreach with deans and others who make decisions about faculty resources.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think partnerships are critical, and kind of getting outside of your silo, the MOBTS silo, of only speaking, you were on the board briefly, and we used to talk about being East Coast centric. Most of our members, when you do kind of a geocode analysis, they mostly come from the East because a lot of the history in the organization is from the East.
Yep.
Breaking from that mold and really attracting community college educators, online faculty. Our mission is not narrowed to smaller private or regional public comprehensives. It is really all management educators. And I think that's the case too in, say, a college of business.
Yeah.
One of the things that attracted me to Georgia College is that it is the public liberal arts university of the Georgia system.
Yeah.
And it's a member of the Council of Public Liberal Arts Colleges, COPLAC. And I knew of Georgia College very well and its reputation and its very focused mission on rigor and experiential learning and transformative experiences and being a residential institution. One of the things I observed in my research and talking with the search firm and initial conversations with folks here is that the College of Business was, for the most part, fairly alienated and isolated. Even though we're on the main campus, I'm looking outside at the columns of the building out on the front quad area, the front lawn, as they call it. So we're centrally located, yet
the relationships didn't exist.
Relationships didn't exist for the most part. I think on the margins they did. What I did at Asheville was I always used to say at Asheville, management and the study of organizations is a liberal art.
Yeah.
To say that we aren't, then you question, well, what is the liberal arts, right? Well, it's really understanding, the complexity of the human existence. Yeah. And organizations are social phenomena. And
in this building called Google, or in this building.
Exactly. Yeah. And if we don't not just expose our students to history, philosophy, language, the sciences, but if we actually collaborate as faculty across disciplines, team teaching, co-developing courses, cross-listing courses, cluster hiring, joint appointments, you name it, developing curricula across disciplines and across, I remember once talking, and this was years ago with NAACSB, and NAACSB has made a real transformational shift with their new standards, but it used to be, multi and interdisciplinarity used to be marketing professors talking to accounting professors. That's not what I'm talking about. I really was exposed to that in my undergraduate experience at Western New England College, now university, which when I was there, it was this much smaller private liberal arts university. And no, it's about management students, reading Moby Dick. It's about management students reading, The Lord of the Flies in an intro course and Principles of Management or something. When I came here, I think one of the reasons I, was offered and made the decision to leave Asheville to come here was that I saw this real opportunity of peeling away at the onion and getting down and dirty and making the case for this unit, the College of Business, being a critical part of the liberal arts identity. And that means having conversations with my dean colleagues about ways we can collaborate and creating a space for the faculty to talk with other faculty. We're doing something right now where we're having conversations between the computer science, which is in the College of Business, computer science faculty, and the math faculty about developing a joint program in data science. And what's fascinating is we're at the table, virtual table, talking about this, and everybody's excited. There's no turf issues at play. We're focused on the students, focused on resources, not generate resources, but how to share resources. And yet we all look at each other, how are we going to make this happen? This has never been done here. This is, we don't even have the structure to make this happen. And that's what excited me here. And it's the same thing. We are in talks early within the College of Business, a diversity inclusivity certificate in business, undergraduate certificate that would really involve courses in sociology and philosophy. There's so much more, but it's part of this is making the case to the faculty, that we can do this. We should be doing this. And I remind them that I don't have a business school pedigree. I'm my master's and PhDs in public administration and policy. My area was work behavior and theory, but I don't come from a business school background. And so I just kind of say to them, you got what you got now, this is this. And then I was very authentic in who I was when I interviewed. It's not like I'm going to come in and then all of a sudden switch, but I've learned the lesson of listening to the faculty outside of my disciplinary area of expertise and how important that is. I'm not an accountant. I was chairing unit head for management and accounting department for 6 years.
You were.
Those accounting faculty, bless their heart, as they say in the South, they put up with me and they taught me. And I remember meeting with firms and graduate programs in accounting and just asking all these questions. And so I think here, And at MOBTS, going back to your question, it is about really getting outside of your silo and collaborating. And here at Georgia College, I think the opportunities are endless, not just collaborating within the university, but collaborating within the system. How do we look at potential, 3+3 programs with a Bachelors of Science in Business and a JD program at another university? Again, and not only partnerships in higher education institutions, but partnerships with local business and nonprofit organizations. I mean, higher education cannot survive in its silo as a unit, as an institution, or in their ecosystem. Ecosystems are going to have to come together and merge. I'm not afraid of it. I don't think any discipline there's no discipline that I know of that has a monopoly on the complexities of the human existence.
Yeah.
And so I don't,
that was really cool.
if economists, think that they know everything about, decision making, then they should talk to psychologists, and
exactly. And then the sociologists, and then
there's sociologists,
historians, and
and maybe that's why I love the field of organizational behavior and theory. These micro and macro studies of organizations and work inside and humans, because it is so multi and interdisciplinary. And so for me to talk with somebody who's kind of taken it and what Ph.D. programs, they narrowly train you.
Well, so I love how you're thinking. This fall, I kind of put together a series for my institution, and the first speaker was a gentleman named David Sinclair. So David Sinclair is at Harvard. He's a geneticist, and he's trying to cure death. So I partnered with some folks in our chemistry department and in our biology department. And then, of course, we had business students at this meeting as well. And I think some of the faculty at first blush were thinking, well, why in the world would a leadership educator bring in a person who's trying to cure death, a geneticist from Harvard? Well, when you start really peeling back, how does that change organizational life? What does that mean for society? What business opportunities present themselves if this gentleman is successful and we extend the human health span and lifespan another 30 years? What does that look like? All kinds of things shift and change.
Absolutely.
So I love that, because I think just even my area of focus, which is leadership, I mean, you can look at it through the lens of biology, you can look at it through the lens of history, political science, sociology, psychology. I mean, you're exactly right. It's rooted in all of that work, right? Mm-hmm. So I couldn't agree more. And I also agree, I can't agree with you more that I think that the strength will be in those relationships and those collaborations, because I don't know that any one institution, of course, there's a few out there, but the strength is going to be in those relationships and that web, that network that's created, not only on campus with the relationships among faculty, but also, like you said, in the community or within the system within Georgia.
Well, and I think, if you read about mergers and acquisitions in higher education, it's painful.
Yeah.
It's disruptive, whether it's privates coming together or kind of forced upon mergers within public systems. I think the challenge facing presidents and provosts in the next 3 to 5 years will to be proactively create those relationships and partnerships and demonstrate the added value for your institution to have those. And rather than it being forced upon you by a board or, in the private or public sector, I think that's the real challenge. But I think it's a tremendous opportunity. And you've seen, there are examples of that in the Northwest with Willimantic University, a smaller liberal arts college, partnering with another. And I think there's been some examples in Massachusetts as well at the private level. I have examples in the public sector of that being proactively done. Typically, that's often brought about by boards of governors or boards of regents. But I think that opportunity exists. And for MOBTS, that's for us to survive as an organization, as a nonprofit, really dependent upon our members. As a 48-year-old organization, we need to recruit the next generation of management educators, and we need to retain them and show them how important our organization is in their development as teacher scholars. And we shouldn't just be focusing on such a small pool of management educators. And you look at the research that's being written by scholars around the world, there's an ample space for us to share our opportunity. And I'm thrilled by the fact that the board, the current and most recent boards, really kind of embrace this idea of expanding our reach. Excited to see where that goes forward. But I will not be. We have an election this year for president-elect. If you're interested, Scott. Just, man, if you want to take all that leadership theory and put it into practice, my friend,
from secretary to president-elect, huh?
Hey, you never know. Just saying.
I'll never forget that first meeting when I actually just took notes, right? Everyone was like, "What? You're taking the notes right now? I can't even believe this. You're blowing my mind."
On a laptop?
Yeah, I'm the secretary, right? That's what I do, correct?
Oh, no. Yeah, and you help the president keep on track. So that's important.
So, Michael Stratton, I always close down these conversations. Real quick, I heard in that dialogue a couple themes for me that stood out. Obviously, the importance of relationships. Obviously, the importance of collaboration. And I think it's through those two fundamental foundational components that there is strength. There's strength because of the trust that's built and that social capital and that glue that exists. Mm-hmm. But then there's also strength in numbers, so to speak, in that and synergy in different perspectives and in how these different parties can both benefit from
absolutely
collaborations. So thank you for that. I really, really appreciate that, because I think those are two very, very important fundamental components where if you have a leader that is invested in both of those over the last decade, over the last 5 years, or is just starting out like you and doing so, that's probably two pretty solid places to begin to help navigate all of the complexity that's occurring, whether that's digital disruption, COVID, whether that's shifts in higher ed, demographic shifts that are occurring. I mean, it's all over the place. Mm-hmm. So I always close these out by asking, what you're streaming, what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you've read recently that stood out. It may not have anything to do with management and leadership and org behavior. Maybe it's just The Mandalorian, which I would imagine you have watched the latest 4 episodes of that, right, sir?
Yes, absolutely. And The Crown, which I'm telling you, I found myself now watching documentaries and reading up on, the Queen and her reign, and what a unique position that is the sovereign and the constitutional separation in the monarchy in between the sovereign and the elected leader. It's just absolutely fascinating, and to see historically, I had read previously about Thatcher and the Queen, but to see it play out, it was just absolutely fascinating.
That's one of my favorite films. It's The Queen. Have you ever watched that film?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great film from the contextual leadership challenges and how maybe context is moving by. Because if you think about what she has experienced over her lifetime, I mean, are we on our 5th or 6th decade of her reign?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's met every American president since I forget who. Ever.
Absolutely. Right?
Yeah. Okay. And so I have one for you. Have you watched The Queen's Gambit?
No.
Michael Stratton.
On Netflix?
Yeah, Queen's on Netflix. Gambit. Queen's Gambit. Prioritize it. Please, please, please. And we have not finished The Mandalorian. We are going through them again with kind of to make sure we're up to date with the next 4. So
yeah, no, that's brilliant.
Anything else? Any other hot tips, sir? Podcasts? Books?
I'm not sure if this helps. Well, it probably hurts you, I guess. Depends. I don't have that much capital in the podcast world, but I've never been a podcast fan. I don't know what.
Not yet.
Not yet. But I honestly, I love NPR, and so I remember growing up listening to Car Talk, and so I do actually think they have a podcast now where they replay old episodes.
Probably.
Obviously, so might have to check that out.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I had not been a huge listener of podcasts myself, but especially with commutes, it started to
Mm,
become much more into my kind of entering into my day to day, and just some fascinating conversations with
mm.
incredible people that have really drawn me in. And so, I don't know, I've kind of started to love the space.
And maybe that's what, there are a lot of folks who went from reading to the books on tape to now podcasts. And maybe I never was a books on tape guy because I never had that much of a long commute, but
I
maybe,
can't do the books on tape either. I find my mind wanders, right? And
yeah,
then I
yeah. At
lost
least
in the
the
story.
podcasts are shorter, focused bits.
Well,
But
Michael Stratton, thank you so much for the work that you do with
thank you
uh,
for this
any
opportunity.
number of different organizations. You're out there leading. I think your two foundational components are solid. That's wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. You too. Thank you.
I kind of did my post show recap during the podcast. I think that might be a first. But just to summarize real quick, collaboration, resources, getting out of our silos, and making sure that we have solid relationships to back all of that. Michael, thanks for the work that you do. You're leading. You're leading in very, very difficult times. You're leading in two very, very important organizations, the Management and Organizational Behavior Teaching Society, a wonderful organization for listeners to check out, and you can do so by looking at the show notes. They do an incredible job of helping educators be better. And it doesn't matter what type of educator you are. I think you can learn something at MOBTS. And then Georgia College, helping that institution chart its course for the future and thrive. So incredibly important. Michael, thanks for the work that you do, sir. I hope all of you listeners enjoyed this conversation today. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful day. Take care and be well. You have been listening to the Practical Wisdom for Leaders podcast. If you liked what you heard, please share it with others and let them know what we're up to. And one last quick reminder to click subscribe so you know when we publish new episodes. And of course, we'd love to hear your feedback. You can stay in touch with me by visiting www.scottjallen.net or any number of social media platforms. Be well, be safe, and make a difference wherever you are on this beautiful planet. And now, here's Kate's twin sister, Emily, with the outro.
You've been listening to Phronesis, Practical Wisdom with Scott Allen.